I want to put the emphasis on today is not finding just the right answer to a problem. And in fact, the problem we're going to work on hasn't even got a right answer. It's got lots of different things that you might come up with as an answer. So the importance of the lesson is to get you guys talking and thinking and working on lots of different kinds of solutions. So it's going to be no hands up. It's going to be thinking about how you're thinking and concentrating on explaining. Oh, and I guess too, if we're concentrating on explaining, the other thing that we ought to do is really work hard at listening to each other. And that's going to be not just me. I don't mean me, I do mean each other. Because if you're working hard at explaining, if everybody else is going, ho-de-dum-de-dum-de-dum, ho-hum, then that's going to be not a very good reaction. So you're going to work hard at listening to each other as well. Okay? All right, the first thing that we're going to do is have an initial think on your own about the task. Task's in front of you on your small piece of paper. So if you could grab one of those, I'd like you first of all to think on your own about how you might go about solving it. Not what the answer is, but how might you go about solving it. And then after you've thought on your own, I'm going to get you to talk in pairs and in a three, okay, about what ideas you've come up with. So you won't be left on your own, but just have a little think on your own. Feel free to scribble, jot on your whiteboard, how might you go about solving it? Okay, off you go then. Why don't you then take your thoughts, speak them out loud to the person next to you, and then talk about which ways you've both come up with, and then we'll have a big discussion after that, okay? Off you go.
They're going to have to give £100 to the mum, but they're going to have to split it between themselves. So
that's going to give £25 each.
Yeah, so they give the same amount of money each, so it's fair on each pupil.
They're all the same length. So that says 1 mile, 2 miles, 3 miles, 4 miles, 5 miles. So
How long it takes to get there?
Would Ben or Chris pay the most because they've went
and it is Dan's mum,
to get to the other person's house.
What I'm going to do now is collect some of your ideas, because you've had ideas on your own, you've had ideas as a pair, maybe that's been the same idea, maybe it's been more ideas, and now if we work as a group together, then we can actually have a collection of ideas. So, let's start with Max at the back, please. What did you come up with, Max, as an idea?
I thought that you could see how long it takes for them to go to school, and
Do you mean time-wise, Max?
Yeah.
Yeah?
And just see how much they've got left.
Can you just explain a little bit more about that?
Just see how much it is for the whole, sum of it. Check how much it, is for the whole thing. Then just minus it all.
When you say minus it all?
Take away the money that they've paid.
Okay. Thank you. So I've written there, Max, time to get to school, take away the money. Is that okay for representing the kind of idea that you had? Alex?
I thought you'd work out how the distance from the houses to the school, and then give them a amount to pay depending on how far away they live.
Can you say a little bit more about that?
Well, it's not fair that Chris pays the same as Anne, because Anne lives nearer the school than Chris. So they should work out the prices depending on how far away they live from the school.
Okay, so divide up depending on distance. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Aaron, what do you think? Have you got anything different that you could add in?
Mine is kind of like Alex's. See how far of the 5 miles you get from Dan to Chris's house, and then Dan would pay that, and just keep going like that till the whole thing's paid.
Okay, say that to me one more time.
You see how far of the 5 miles it takes for Dan to get to Chris's house, and then Dan would pay that amount, and then see how long it takes Chris to get to Ben's house, and he'd pay that amount. And just do the same with Ben and Anne in the school.
Okay. Okay, is that okay for that? How far from Dan to Chris's, Chris's to Ben's, etc. Okay. Emma, what do you think so far of the ideas that we've got?
I think we went more along the lines of Alex's.
That was this one, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you say about what it was that actually took you along that direction, do you think?
Because when we worked out, Anne lived closer to the school than Chris did. Chris, lived 8 miles away and Anne lived 2, so Anne should pay less.
When you've come up with an idea, okay, and some of you have started with ideas already, I'd like you to record it on your squared paper so that we've got that. And then, if you're happy with that solution and you think that's fine, what I want you to do is then to try and think of a different approach. We've had some suggestions. How else could it happen? And then what we'll do is we'll have a discussion in about 10 minutes' time on how things are going, what's working, what's not working, what seems to be a good solution, and what seems to be perhaps not so good a solution, even though it is an answer. Why might it not be better than the other things? Is that okay? Any questions at all with our hands up? Lovely, well done. Okay, so who's paying the most?
Anne.
Okay. For her journey to the school?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to explain to me why you think that's fair?
Well, from here it says that Anne lives further away, but nearer to the school than anybody else. So she has to pay, Dan's mum has to pay for more petrol to Anne's house than it is to Chris or Ben's.
Okay. How are you thinking of the journey happening, Daryl? Can you just show me how you think the car's going?
It's going up here
Yeah.
to Chris's,
Yeah.
across here to Ben's,
Yeah.
up here,
And then picking up Anne there
picking up Anne and then turning around and going around the corner to school.
to school. So she's got how far to go, do you think?
2 blocks.
Right. And she's paying the most?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to leave you thinking about that.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
Right then. How are you getting on, ladies?
Well, I thought that because there's 5 people in the car, including Mum, they should share the cost out equally at the end of each term, whatever the cost is, because it depends on the amount of weeks in a term, the total cost. And because it's Mum's car, she should pay as well for it. But another way of doing it is saying that because it's Mum's car, she shouldn't pay. So there's only 4 people paying, and then spread that out equally for whatever the cost is.
What do you think is best, Hannah, of those two?
I think the first one, because it is Mum's car and she will be using it for other things, and she's the one who's decided to use it, so I think she should contribute as well.
Bethany, what do you think is best out of Hannah's suggestions?
I don't agree with that. I think that because they all live different amounts away from it, I don't think Dan should pay either because it's like his mum. And we thought that because who is it? Chris lives the furthest away, he should pay the most, and
Then go down in
go
cost.
down once they get closer to school. So.
How are you going to work out how much it goes down?
£10 every time.
Yeah, and how many miles they are, then you just kind of guess that a bit. But.
Yeah.
What I'm wondering is whether we actually do have some more information, it's just not printed on there. I mean, what else is there that might help you? That's all I'm going to say. But I wonder if there's things that...
Roads.
Right, go on then, keep thinking. What's amazing to me is that we can have a class of people and that you can come up with such amazing different solutions, and they're all pretty good. So if after somebody's presented you'd like to say, actually, I'd like to disagree with that because I think mine is better, then please do. Okay. Hannah, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I'm sticking with my first idea, which was because there were 5 of them in the car, including Mum, split it 5 ways, whatever the price. And I thought of that because it's the fairest way, I think, and if I was in their situation, then that's the way that I would do it.
Okay. What does anyone else think? Alex, what do you think of that?
Well, we worked out the amount of miles they travel in a day and then added them all up, and then it was 50, so we thought we'd double it, and then that would be the price that they each pay. So Dan would pay 40, Chris would pay 32, Ben would pay 20, and Anne would pay 8.
Can you just explain your thinking right from the starting bit again there, Alex?
Well, on the map, it shows you how many miles they go, so we added up what each person does in miles
Right,
on a
hang
day.
on just a second. Girls, can you see how that might help you?
Yeah.
How might that help you?
Well, then you find out the miles.
Yeah,
in
and it'd be
between.
easier to work out how much they have to pay then.
Then you would actually be able to do it accurate.
Yeah, not the way we did it.
Yeah, not just estimation.
estimating.
Yeah.
Alex, carry on.
So when we got the miles for each person, we added them up and it came to 50. So we doubled the miles to get the price. So Dan would pay £40, Chris would pay £32, Ben would pay £20 and Anne would pay £8.
Are you convinced that's the best solution?
We started thinking up of another one which we thought would be better.
Oh, right. Explain that for me then. Not so much the solution, but what it is you're thinking.
The how many miles they're going, and like the term is normally around about 7 weeks. So we've done 7 weeks in a term, and how much miles they go in all them 7 weeks, and then we're gonna add it up money wise. Like if it's £100, and by all the miles, we'll have to do that all evenly.
Anything else anyone would like to chip in at this stage?
Well, we thought about what Alex said about splitting it with the distances, but then we thought like if it was real, then they'd probably argue quite a bit about the cost. So if they split it between the four, then they get an even amount, and it'd be quite fair.
So you're splitting it between the 4. Why not 5?
Well, we did write that as well. Like if the mum wanted to pay, then she would have
Which
her
is
bit.
best, do you think?
Well, like the mum like kind of bought the car, so she spent the money on that. So it'd probably be fairer if the kids paid for it.
Girls, what do you think is the best answer that we've come up with so far?
Split it between how far they go per distance.
Per distance?
Yeah.
Why do you think that's most convincing? You've got the girls behind you nodding there, going, yeah.
Because if like Anne's round the corner and then she has to pay more, but she lives closer, she might decide that she doesn't want to do it and just walk. So if you just make it so she pays less because she lives closer to it, so she doesn't have to travel further, then it's sort of even.
You've got some great ideas about what makes things fair, and we've got different ideas because Hannah's saying fair is splitting it equally, and some people see that as unfair, and that fair is actually splitting it according to distance. I think we all split it according to distance, didn't we? Those of us that split it up? Yeah, okay, good. Thank you for thinking about the fact that there's a difference between maths sometimes and what happens in real life. The fact that sometimes if we do things mathematically, we actually end up with a lot of big arguments, and some families and some friends fall out, which is always quite an interesting thing.